What is your I'm gonna pretend I didn't see that moment. I was in San Diego picking a friend up from the airport. I had a few minutes and needed to use a restroom and stopped by a McDonald's in a sketchy location. A lot of the people inside looked homeless or high. I was about to ask for a token for the door because it had one of those weird locks, but someone said it didn't work and I could go right in. I opened the door and there is a man standing in front of the mirror. One chocolate chip cookie in each hand. He is just staring at himself eat them. He looks at me and steps outside. I do my business, and when I opened the door to leave, he is standing there with just one cookie left. As I leave, he walks in, and as the door closes, I see him just face the mirror again and start eating the cookie. Used to live in Jamaica when I was younger. Corporal punishment was normal in school, but I wasn't used to it since I wasn't from there. Was bullied by a kid because I didn't speak with a Jamaican accent. Just general name calling and mocking, typical 10-year-old bullshit. At recess, I told one of the teachers and she just screamed his name and told him to get his ass in the classroom. Soon as he stepped in the room, she slapped him across the face and told him to drop his shorts, then started beating his ass. Turns out that teacher was his mom. I just turned around and walked away. Teacher here. One of my students was being bullied regularly. Student and I both made reports, but administration wouldn't back us up, so the bullying continued. One day, he took it too far and the student delivered one excellent punch across the jaw. The bully was just laying on the ground, and it looked like it was over. Student and I made eye contact. He looked blatantly panicked. I just put finger over my mouth and walked away. Sorta mine and my co-worker's story. I had to do an ABG draw in the arterial blood gas, which uses a special heparinized syringe with a wicked sharp needle. I proceed as usual when I go to draw, introducing myself, telling the patient why I'm here, explaining to them what I'm going to do. With the patient's consent, I turned my back to the patient to ready my ABG needle. Now these things come in a kit you have to assemble, and getting the needle connected to the syringe. After I connected the two pieces, I went to take the plastic cap off the needle, but it was stuck, so with one big yank I uncapped the needle and somehow jabbed myself with the tip in my finger. I couldn't believe what I just did, but not wanting to panic the patient, I discarded that kit stating a defect, covered my now bleeding finger with another glove to hide the pooling blood, and retrieved another kit from my cart and assembled it. The cap came off much easier, and I was able to complete my draw with no problem. When I got back to the lab, I tried to stealthy get to the bathroom to clean my hand and put a band-aid on, but my co-worker noticed right away. "Coworker, why do you still have a glove on your hand from the My face must have given it away, and before I could say anything, she asks, "What happened? Are you okay?" I softly replied, "I accidentally poked my finger with the ABG needle." Co-worker just stared at me for a few moments, then asked, "Was it a clean needle, or had it been used on the patient?" I explained what happened, and she sighed with relief. She then looked around the lab and said to me, "Go wash your finger and put a band-aid on." She then turned back to the computer and went on with her work like that little conversation didn't happen. I felt very grateful for that, because the policy and procedure for a suspected needle stick is blood draws, antiviral meds, time off. I didn't have PTO or anything, so it would have been without pay and lots of paperwork. I'm thankful to her for saving me all that headache. Edit. Sorry if I wasn't super clear. They would have started me on meds after they drew the patient and got results. Time off mostly came from my manager for mental health reasons. He was a nice person. My very first job was a busboy at a restaurant, whose target demographic was the elderly. Manager on duty most nights was a large gay man who was mean as fuck. He and I never really crossed paths and I stayed off his radar. One night, after closing, the wait staff and I left from the front door and manager left via back door. As I walked up to my car, I realized I'd left my keys on the table in the back of the kitchen. I ran around back and fortunately, manager was in his car and hadn't driven away yet. I ran up and tapped his window, only to see him look up from a small mirror containing several rails of cocaine. He and his boyfriend alternated looking at me and looking at each other. I just said, I didn't see shit and I just need my keys. I left them inside. He quietly got out of the car, reopened the door and let me in. For a few days, he avoided me. Then he spent several days being overly nice to me. Eventually, he pulled me aside, handed me $300, and asked if that was enough for me to forget what I saw. Apparently, he was on probation and a drug charge would have put him back in for several years, and he was petrified I was going to tell people what I'd seen. 16-year-old me really cold views $300, but it felt dirty. I just told him to not be a dick to me and we'd be just fine. Narrator, and things were fine. There are a lot of these while teaching because kids are awkward and don't need your help to feel more awkward. Girl I was walking behind had her skirt blow right up and display everything. She looked around panicked and embarrassed, so I just pretended to be looking at the building across the street so she'd think I didn't see. I've been there. It's embarrassing and awkward. At the dentist. Hygienist finishes up, works at the desk for a minute or two, hands me the card that says when my next appointment is. Flip the card over, and written on the back it says I love when you tell me the dirty things you are going to do to me. As soon as I get done reading it, suddenly she says, oh, I wrote the wrong date, let me give you a new card. She gives me the new appointment card and goes to get the dentist. Dentist and hygienist come in after a few minutes and both act like nothing happened. I kept my mouth shut. I got the benefit of I'm gonna pretend I didn't see that when I was a junior in high school, some kid on my bus was being obnoxious and pulling at the ends of my hair randomly to piss me off, and I said, classmate, if you don't cut the shit I'm going to hit you. And he didn't listen, so I turned around and backhanded him in the face. Our bus driver was notorious for running a tight ship, but that day she just looked back at us through that mirror thing and just shook her head and kept driving. Cheryl was the shit. My younger brother, about 14, had smeared peanut butter all over his ass cheeks and was standing on the toilet repeatedly pressing his butt up against the bathroom window. My parents tried questioning him when they found the mess, but I'm not even sure he knew why he was doing it. A photo of my dad from the late 80s or early 90s, with a few lines of coke in front of him, and a rolled up dollar bill beside them, looking higher than I have ever seen a person before or since. Probably one of the weekends he bitched out of picking us up, so mom sent us to stay with me and aunt. Every time I see someone stealing shit where I work, I don't get paid enough to pretend to care. When someone walks into a glass store in front of you. Buying tickets at a machine. The young man ahead of me pulled out his wallet and a condom fell out. He looked incredibly embarrassed. I just looked away. This guy fell totally on his face and he looked so embarrassed. I quickly pretended I never saw it. LMAO. Don't forget to consider the idea to maybe think about potentially subscribing. Peace.